high of 26 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm John Stratford.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening to you. It's 8:03 on LBC. Now, over the past few weeks, as you know, we've been interviewing all of the candidates for the Tory leadership. Well, I say all of them, 9 out of the 10. They are all of those interviews. They're an hour long each. They're available for your delight and delectation on the LBC website, or indeed my website at iaindale.com. We haven't yet interviewed Boris Johnson after Saturday. I'm not actually expecting to, I have to say, but you never know. But we are also going to be interviewing the two candidates for the Liberal Democrat leadership, because Sir Vince Cable is standing down. They are Sir Ed Davey, Liberal Democrat MP for Kingston and Surbiton, and also Jo Swinson, MP for East Dunbartonshire. She's joining us next Monday, but Ed is here with us for the next hour. If you'd like to ask him any questions about the future of the Liberal Democrats, his policy platform, what he believes, do give us a call, 0345 6060 973. Well, Ed, very good evening to you.
Good evening.
Not the best of days for you today.
Yeah, well, an article went out, and I was having my criticism of Boris Johnson, and I used a word which I shouldn't have done, and I've apologised for that.
Well, let's just read out the offending paragraph. It says, to be candid, we need more than money and a 20% plus ranking in the polls, so I hereby float the idea of a Remain alliance to decapitate that blonde head in Uxbridge and South Ruislip if Johnson calls a snap election to deliver Brexit. Now, of course, people have been saying, well, that word decapitate in the current circumstances after the murder of Joe Cox is completely inappropriate. You came under some criticism from Jo Swinson as well. How could that happen? Why would you use that word?
I think it was done when probably it was too tired and too busy. I apologise for it, and I shouldn't have used it.
It was, of course, a word that was used in 2005, I think, when the Lib Dems had an overt. I mean, it was different days, different times, and you wanted to get rid of people like David Davis, Oliver Letwin, and that there was this so-called decapitation strategy. As I say, we're now years on from that, and we have to watch our use of language, don't we?
I absolutely do. I agree with that totally, and I think all politicians, given the rise in hate crime in particular, and the concerns that we have about serious violence in the capital and elsewhere, we have to use words more carefully, and I didn't on that occasion.
You've also today, in an interview on Sky News, described the Conservative Party as far right. Some would say the use of this kind of language is used by people on the far right. Is it really fair to describe a mainstream political party as far right?
I think the Conservative Party have moved to the right, and obviously they're a rightist.
That's not far right, though, is it?
Well, they're a rightist party, and they're moving to the right. Let me give you some examples. I mean, I think some of the right-wing positions of the Brexiteers, in terms of deregulation, for example, are very right-wing positions. I think
we all know what far right means, and that's sort of almost Nazi. It's racist. It's horrible stuff. Now, you can take a position on deregulation, which you might disagree with. That's not far right, but by anyone's stretch of the imagination.
Well, I think there are positions that people on the right of British politics take, and there are people in the Conservative Party who are much more, I would call, centre-right, who want to, I would say, even a fairer society. But I think there are positions being taken by a number of people who I think are on the extreme.
You've labelled Boris Johnson as a preacher of division. Again, a use of language which many people might say is inappropriate.
I don't think so in that case. I mean, he's made comments which are racist, which are homophobic, which are Islamophobic, which are anti-Scottish. And just as, sometimes we have to watch our words, and I've admitted it in my case, he should watch his words. I don't believe he's apologised.
Let's move on from that and talk about this idea of a Remain alliance. Just explain what you mean by that.
Well, there are two aspects of it. The first is trying to stop a hard Brexit. As a Liberal Democrat, I'm completely against Brexit, and I believe there is a majority in Parliament who do not want a no-deal Brexit. And so I think we should work across party to make sure this catastrophe doesn't hit our country. And there are different ways we can do that in Parliament. We could pass a law to make sure MPs were allowed to vote, which would be outrageous in my view if they weren't allowed to vote. And if the government of the day stops that, maybe we have a vote of no confidence. And I've talked about forming a government of national unity, a temporary government, which some people might say is a Remain alliance in Parliament. I would say there'd probably be some Brexiteers in it as well. The other way of thinking about it is at election time. And I personally favour a rather informal approach, rather like happened in 1997 and 2001, when there was a lot of tactical voting against the Conservatives. The Conservatives had been in power for 18 years, and then in the 2001 election, no one wanted them back. And there was a huge amount of tactical voting. And I can see that happening in an election that might happen later this year, with people tactically voting for the candidate who represents Remain most clearly.
And yet 17 days ago, you said to the Guardian that you wanted to rule out a Remain alliance. How can you flip-flop within such a short time?
No, that's not flip-flop. Let me try to explain the difference.
Hang on, today you're advocating a Remain alliance, and 17 days ago you were ruling it out. It can't be both.
No, unfortunately, it's the way some journalists write headlines. Let me try and be specific. I think a Remain alliance, which is a formal deal, which says, we are going to stand down in 40 seats and you're going to stand in those 40 seats, that type of Remain alliance, which has been advocated by some people, I don't think that's appropriate. I think an informal Remain alliance, if that's what you want to call it.
Well, look, you had a Liberal Democrat SDP alliance in the 1980s. That was an alliance, a pact between two parties, and you stood down candidates in each other's constituencies.
Indeed, and I'm not advocating that. That's my point.
So it's not an alliance.
Well, it depends how you interpret that term. What I'm talking about here, I'm being very specific and clear, and have been in some of the articles I've written and I've talked to journalists about, is I strongly think, given the threat of Brexit to our economy and our country, that I think Remain MPs can work together, and indeed Remain voters can work together through things like the tactical voting that we've seen before. I think that would be very, very powerful.
But if you have in a particular constituency a Liberal Democrat candidate, a Green candidate, and a pro-Remain Labour candidate, you're effectively splitting the vote. So what's the point? Surely it'd be better to have one. If you feel so strongly about remaining in the EU, which I know you do, why don't you just say, let's have an alliance and have one candidate? Well,
what I'm saying is the tactical voting approach, which I've been advocating this programme and advocating those articles you're referring to, is something that was achieved in 1997-2001 very powerfully. In that case, it was about anti-conservatives. So, for example, in my seat, it was clear that I wasn't the only anti-conservative candidate, but I was the one most likely to win. Just down the road in Wimbledon, it was the Labour Party that was most likely to win to beat the Conservative. And so people voted tactically on that information. And that is not a dissimilar thing for what I'm proposing now, if we have a general election, to make sure that the Remain vote isn't fragmented but comes behind the candidate most likely to beat either the Brexiteer or the Conservative.
So if Dominic Grieve in Beaconsfield is re-selected as a Conservative, he's an overt Remainer, would you then stand down a Liberal Democrat candidate in Beaconsfield, or even advise people to vote for him?
But I'm just referring to the fact that I'm not saying standing down. I'm talking about a tactical voting.
No, but would you tactically vote for him?
Well, it would be up for those people who develop these websites. It would be completely appropriate.
So this wouldn't be official Liberal Democrat advice. You wouldn't say, right, okay. In this constituency, we would say you should vote for somebody that isn't a Liberal Democrat.
Nor could it or should it be.
This is really dishonest politics, though, isn't it? Urging people to vote for a party that they don't really believe in just because they happen to agree with your views on Remain. That's dishonest.
It's not dishonest at all. It's been very upfront, very, very clear.
Well, surely we should all vote for parties that we actually believe in and believe in their policies.
If people believe, as I think many will do in this election, that the most significant issue is stopping Brexit, I don't think it's unreasonable for people who want to stop Brexit, as I passionately do, to be relaxed about seeing websites produced by the psephologists, the election experts, the people who can make independent judgments on these and guide people to the candidate in that constituency most likely to stop Brexit. That seems completely reasonable, and I'm hardly being non-transparent about it. I wouldn't be talking about it on your show.
No, but the honest view would be to say, look, I believe that staying in the European Union is the most fundamental of issues in this election. Effectively, it will be, I mean, if it is this year, it will be portrayed as a one-issue election, even if other issues are going to come into play. The honest thing to do is for the pro-Remain parties to come together in a proper Remain alliance and put one candidate up. Then you stand the best chance, surely, of getting more MPs in the House of Commons.
Well, there are problems, as you know, probably better than many people, with first-past-the-post system. What we saw in the European elections, which was a PR system, it was much easier for parties to put their position forward, and actually Liberal Democrats did incredibly well. We got our best results ever in the European elections.
Absolutely did.
We beat the Labour Party and the Conservative Party for the first time in over 100 years in the same poll in a UK-wide election. And that has given the Liberal Democrats a real boost. It's why we're actually ahead in the polls in relation to the Tory and Labour Party for the first time for decades. So, we have gone forward in a very clear position. However, when you get back to Westminster elections, you're no longer in a PR system as you are in the European
Exactly. So
election.
therefore, you need to have a united approach.
Well, I'm talking about doing that through tactical voting, and that answers your question.
No, it doesn't.
It does
Because
answer your question.
that's a really risky thing to do, because you still risk more Brexit-supporting MPs being elected if you have one opposition candidate against Conservatives or Brexit Party candidates. You are far more likely to win more seats, and you know that as well as I do.
Yeah, but you trying to have your cake and eat it, almost like Boris Johnson, if you don't mind me saying so. The reality is...
I'm a great believer in cake, like Boris,
the reality,
despite being a diabetic.
The reality is there will be some people whose main reason for voting in general election isn't Brexit. And so if people stood down, they wouldn't be able to have the choice of the parties, would they? But for those people who believe it is the overriding issue, tactical voting approaches seem to me a very sensible way of doing that. And it still gives voters choice, and I'd have thought you as a Democrat would like that.
Well, I do approve of choice, and I'm not advocating people voting for any party, but I think mostly you want to vote for somebody whose views that you more or less agree with, but sometimes you will issue a protest vote, just as in the 2018 local elections where I live in Tunbridge Wells. I did not want to vote Conservative because I thought the local council was corrupt. There was only one alternative for me to vote in that election because there was only one other candidate, and that candidate was a Liberal Democrat. So for the first time in my life, Ed, I voted for a Liberal Democrat.
Hey, I'm now really enjoying this conversation.
I knew you would be. Not enthusiastically, but as a protest.
So I can't give you a membership form.
I'm afraid not. No. Where do you see things going, though, over the next few months? Because I think there is now a possibility of a general election. As a possible Lib Dem leader, where are you going to pitch the Liberal Democrats more broadly?
Well, first of all, we'll go into that election as the most pro-Remain party, and I think that not only has seen as huge success in recent months, but I think people would expect and want us to lead that Remain campaign. So that's clearly going to be a key issue for us. I would also, given both my track record and what I've came to politics for, want to focus very much on the environment. We do have a climate emergency, in my view, in Britain and the world, and the next government's got to tackle it from day one. The current government is, in my view, failing to get any serious climate change policies together, and I would want my party to be the strongest on this, and I've developed a whole package of policies already.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. We have to go for a break in a second, but I should have said this at the beginning. Let me remind you can, of course, as with all the other similar programmes that we've done like this, you can watch us on the LBC Facebook page, on the Twitter feed, and on the LBC website at lbc.co.uk. More from Ed Davey in just a moment. We'll open up the phone line. Well, in fact, we have opened up the phone lines, but we'll be taking your calls to 0345 6060973. It's 16 minutes past 8.
LBC.
Unlock the city with the new Range Rover Evoque. Know your side streets. From your inner city beats. Know your underbelly and where to fill your belly.
Your lamb, madam.
Know your north from your south. Live for the city with the new Range Rover Evoque. Land Rover, above and beyond.
This summer, Q is for quizzical comedy.
That's what you're getting, so you better enjoy it.
Quality craftsmanship.
It's bang on.
Quirky cars. quite brilliant goals.
Superb goal!
Quarried treasures.
Big nuggets, here we come.
Quantifiably, quintessentially, quite simply, Quest. Now in our new home on Freeview Channel 12 and also available on Virgin, Freesat and Sky.
It's absolute magic.
Does it matter to you how your money's invested? Think about it. You've got your own values, but do the people who invest your money share them? With a Wealthify stocks and shares ISA, you can put your money into an ethical plan. Just tell us how you want to invest. Are you cautious, adventurous, or somewhere in between? And start your Wealthify ethical ISA today. Easy. For more information, download the app or visit wealthify.com. With investing, capital is at risk and you could get back less than you put in.
5 out of 5. It's a fantastic smart TV, decent value for money, and the picture quality is incredible. Not that I've actually watched it, never even used it. That's right, this is a fake review, and I can paint quite the picture for the right price, of course, wasting your time and your money.
A fake review could cost you more than you think. A Which membership helps you avoid these lies. Search Which for impartial product reviews. Which, keep questioning.
Okay, guys, as promised, here's my signature caprese salad with fresh Galbanani mozzarella.
In Italy, we say Galbani.
Yeah, Galbanani, topped with fresh basil and drizzled with a perfect balsamic dressing. Mwah.
No, it's Galbani. Galbani mozzarella.
Well, that's what I said. Galbani.
Galbani.
Galbanani.
Oh, my Galbani. For proper Italian mozzarella, it's got to be Galbani.
At the AA, we're always trying to make your journey better. Our mechanics fix 8 out of 10 cars at the roadside, usually within 30 minutes of arriving. You could say we're simply the best. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong song. Join today from just £4.50 a month. Visit theaa.com. The AA, because anything can happen. New customers only. T's and C's apply.
Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Tweet at LBC.
20 past 8, we're going to come to your calls to Ed Davey in just a moment. 0345 6060 973. Let's continue what you were talking about on the environment and climate change, because that is one of the areas where I think the Liberal Democrats have been quite distinctive over the years. You were in government, you were Energy and Climate Change Secretary. What were you prevented from doing then that you now want to do?
Oh, going further and faster on renewables. For example, I would have gone further on tidal power. I think the decision not to proceed with the Swansea Bay Tidal Lagoon and indeed a suite of tidal lagoons across the Wales and the West Coast is a really bad decision by the government. Also,
but why didn't you take that decision when you had the chance?
We were preparing the ground, but I basically prepared all the ground for the next government to take the decision. The Tories actually had it in their manifesto and then didn't proceed to implement it, which was a huge shame. Taking those decisions take a little while, by the way, and you can't just do it overnight. I prepared the ground to make sure it happened. However,
on some things, there's a good argument for a benevolent dictatorship, isn't there? Because these things do take too long sometimes.
Well,
I half jest, but you know what I mean.
Well, you literally a decision that's that significant, involving a lot of money, impacting on a lot of things, the environment and all the rest of it, you have to get that right. And I put in place all the framework, and I was just very disappointed when the Conservatives didn't proceed with tidal power.
And what was their reason for that? Money?
Well, they say it's going to be very costly, but what they fail to add to that is the first of a kind, so the Swansea Bay would be the first of a kind tidal lagoon, is always a bit more expensive. So the first nuclear power station, the first offshore wind farm, they're always more expensive.
So how much would it have cost?
Well, there's different figures depending on how you do the different calculations, but the latest figure I've seen is it would cost no more than the nuclear power station in Somerset. And then...
That is quite a few billion, isn't
it? Well, no, in terms of the price of electricity, it's actually cheaper to build the nuclear power station because it doesn't produce so much energy, but per unit of energy it would be the same. But the most important thing is that the second tidal lagoon, and the third tidal lagoon, and the fourth tidal lagoon will be much, much cheaper.
Because I think
just as we've seen with offshore wind. I mean,
yeah, sure.
When I made the first contract for offshore wind, it was £140 per unit of electricity, and everyone said that's terribly expensive. Thanks to doing that and putting in the competitive auctions, the price of offshore wind is now less than £60 in a very short time.
The thing is with tidal power is that I think people who are not sort of environmental obsessives, they cannot get that because they know that there are tides twice a day. They know that the power can then be harnessed, whereas wind power has always been a much more difficult sell to the public, hasn't it? Because, of course, wind doesn't blow all the time.
Well, yes, we noticed that, but that doesn't mean it can't work very well.
No, I'm not arguing about whether it can work well or not, but for ordinary voters who don't obsess about politics like you or me, they can it's a relatively simple concept that tidal power ought to be a good thing.
And it is, and it's a great shame that under the Conservatives we're not proceeding with it. But I just want to take your criticism on the wind power, because wind power...
I wasn't aware I was uttered any, but I can do.
Okay, well look, let me take it head on though. You're right that the wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine, and the real prize in renewable energy and the prize in energy policy is to be able to store that electricity when the wind is blowing, the sun is shining, to use it in moments when that's not. The great news, the really fantastic news for those who want to tackle climate change, is that technologies to store that power are now being developed so we can safely and affordably store electricity for when the sun isn't shining, when the wind isn't blowing. So all the criticisms I had as Secretary of State, particularly from the right-wing press, that, it's too expensive and, it won't work when the wind isn't right, those are now disappearing. Renewable power, thanks to our policies, Liberal Democrat policies, is now the cheapest form of electricity, and we are dealing fast with the issues that we always knew about, that the wind doesn't always blow.
Now, a lot of Liberal Democrats were hoping for a leader who wasn't a member of the coalition government. Layla Moran was touted as the future of the Liberal Democrats. She decided not to stand. You and Joe Swinson have been going around saying that the austerity policies of the coalition government were wrong, and yet you were in government for the whole period and supported them.
I don't believe I have said that, actually. I've said, you may have a quote there, but what I have said is we should abolish austerity going forward. I have said that when we inherited the government in 2010 and went into coalition, we had to take tough decisions because we were borrowing £400 million a day, and I haven't shrunk from those. And what I have said is that we did stop George Osborne and the Conservatives cutting benefits far deeper, as they wanted to do.
So you think austerity was the right policy?
It was for a short period. We absolutely had to sort the finances out.
Which coincided with the period that you then left government, then you decided it wasn't the right policy afterwards. I mean, it's quite convenient.
No, it's not, because it shouldn't go on forever. Come on.
When should it have stopped then?
Well, when you have the finances under control.
Which was when?
Well, we started getting them in control properly about 2013-14. Because, when you're running a national deficit of 10% of your income, which we were in 2010, when you are borrowing £400 million a day, you have to take corrective action. We did that. We took some tough decisions, and we got the spending down, and we increased taxes as well on the better off, thanks to the Liberal Democrats, and we made sure we tried to adjust the economy in a fair way. And that enabled us, I believe, to then abolish austerity. What happened, unfortunately, was in 2015, the Tories governed alone, and they kept austerity going. So we've seen our schools cut when they weren't during the coalition. We've seen the police cut even further, and those types of policies are completely unnecessary now.
If there's a second Brexit referendum and people decide that they want to leave again, would you accept that?
Well, we would have to accept that was the decision. That doesn't mean one can't argue in the future that Britain should in one stage go back into the European Union. If you believe in something, Ian, just because you lose election or referendum doesn't mean you change your view. That would be rather odd, wouldn't it?
But if Britain has voted twice to leave the European Union within, it would be 3 to 4 years, I guess. And we were told that was a once-in-a-generation vote last time, but if there's another vote, that would obviously be before another generation. How long would it be before you think there ought to be a third referendum?
Well, I wouldn't be arguing for a third referendum straight away. Let's be absolutely clear, because there'd been no result. It would have been 2 referendums in a go.
5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
I think you'd have to see how the economy and how the people of Britain responded to that. My view would be that because Brexit would be such a disaster, you'd be surprised at how quickly opinions changed.
And in terms of what you think might happen over the next 6 months, I mean, if we get to October the 30th, let's imagine we have Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. We get to the 31st of October. He hasn't been able to persuade the EU to do a deal. And then somehow Parliament tries to stop him delivering on his promise to take us out by the 31st of October. What happens then?
Well, there's a good question.
Because I haven't got a clue.
Well, I'm not sure if many people have a clue. I'll tell you what I will want to do. I will want to work with people from other political parties, be it the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, SNP and others, to try to make sure we can get legislation to have the people a people's vote and having them the final say. That would be I think the democratic way.
The final say on what? Because the withdrawal, the Theresa May's agreement, I think we can all agree is dead in the water. So you can't have that as part of the referendum. So what would the referendum be?
Well, obviously, on one side, it would be we stay in the EU, and the question would be the alternative question. It would either have to be a deal, which is either the Prime Minister's or a version of it, or if Parliament insisted and the Electoral Commission advised, because as you know, the Electoral Commission gives independent advice on the question, it'd have to be some other version. Now, the problem I have with no deal going on that as a point as an actual phrase is no deal doesn't mean anything.
Well, it does. It just means leaving the European Union, and that's it.
No. I'm sorry, I can't let you get away with that. You would have to, if you were the Prime Minister, taking Britain without a deal, on day one of that situation, you have to start negotiating on a whole range of things. There'd have to be a deal on many other issues.
Well, some of those have already been reached. We know that on airspace, for example, and on lots of other things.
But not in the context of no deal, Ian.
No, they have actually already done that. It was done before March the 29th.
No, that was in the context of a withdrawal agreement. In the context of no deal, there are many things that are unresolved, and that is what's worrying business.
There are many things that are unresolved, but some of the important things, like sort of will flights be able to land, that was resolved before the 29th of March. Forget about the deal or not.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. And let's agree, because there are one or two issues.
Yeah.
Will the flights go? That's right. But and this is really clear, there's a whole range of other things
of course there are.
that the Prime Minister, after a no deal, would have to negotiate on.
I agree.
And so the idea that no deal is nonsense. No deal is a complete deception. Total deception.
Well, the thing
it's
is,
a unicorn. It's a nonsense. And anyone who's proposing no deal, I'm afraid, if they do not admit there'd have to be a whole series of negotiation, concluding in a deal afterwards, they are deceiving the British people in the most disgraceful way.
Does it not worry you, though, that in the latest YouGov poll on this, that I think 48% of the people questioned who gave an opinion said that we should leave under no deal on the 31st of October, come what may, and only 40% said we should remain, and that's quite a big majority.
Well, I haven't seen that poll, but taking it on as face value, part of the problem with those sorts of questions is what is no deal? And one of the problems of the 2016 referendum is no one spelt out what Brexit was. And
they did.
No.
But you didn't like it.
No. Listen, it's very factually obvious. Since 2016, there's been no agreement on what Brexit means. If there had been, we'd have Brexited. We haven't. That's because no one really spelt out in any manifesto, in any clear way.
It's because MPs like you have prevented us from leaving by voting against the withdrawal agreement, something that I don't like, but at least we would have left.
I think blaming the Liberal Democrats for us not Brexiting is really a bit
Well, you are
far-fetched.
in part to blame. There are many other people to blame, but you don't accept the result of the referendum.
I know you're a member of the Conservative Party.
I'm not a member of the Conservative Party and haven't been for 10 years.
Well, OK, a Conservative sympathiser. And it is fair to say that it's a Conservative Party who have not been able to agree amongst themselves.
I completely agree, and I would blame them equally.
Well, probably more so given they're the government, and they're supposed to believe in it. So it backs up my point completely. No one knew what Brexit meant. There were 57 Heinz varieties. I've often called it the baked bean Brexit. There were so many versions of it. That's why it's not happened. And we cannot allow that travesty, that deception on the British people to happen again. Okay. And if you put no deal with no clarity on what no deal means, that is a mass deception. It's unacceptable.
Right, we have lots of calls coming in, which we're going to come to in just a moment. We'll have more from Ed Davey, who's here with me until 9 o'clock. Then we're going to be asking, is there such thing as heaven, believe it or not? I don't know if you've got a view on that, Ed.
Be on your programme.
Good answer. It's 28 minutes to 9. Serena Farrow has the LBC News headlines.
Boris Johnson has challenged his Conservative leadership rival to follow his lead and commit to delivering Brexit by the end of October. Jeremy Hunt has warned a come hell or high water fake deadline is more likely to trigger a general election and then allow Jeremy Corbyn into Downing Street. 12 people have died in Essex after contracting a rare bacterial infection. The NHS says there have been 32 reported cases of invasive Group A streptococcus. And police have been given extra stop and search powers in a part of West London tonight after a man was shot dead. Detectives have just arrested 3 men on suspicion of murder. A 23-year-old was attacked at flats in Feltham on Friday night. LBC weather mostly dry and cloudy overnight in the north and especially Scotland. A few showers and feeling quite humid further south with a low of 7 degrees.
This is LBC.
If travelling is your passion, fall for somewhere new. Fly British Airways to St Kitts, an island of 1,000 treasures. With year-round experiences and cultural gems, explore this laid-back island and get to know your new love. September holidays with flights and 7 nights hotel from $629 per person. Fly from Gatwick, book by July 2nd at ba.com/St Kitts. No one takes you there like British Airways. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. ATOL protected.
Unlock the city with the new Range Rover Evoque. Know your side streets. From your inner city beats. Know your underbelly and where to fill your belly.
Your lamb, madam.
Know your north from your south. Live for the city with the new Range Rover Evoque. Land Rover, above and beyond.
Goodwin Barrett helped William win £21,400 from the Halifax for his missold investment. If the Halifax or any other bank sold you an investment that lost money, start your quick assessment to discover how much you could be owed. Text SOLD to 66777. Text SOLD to 66777 now.
This year we will sell our 250,000th boiler for free, and you could be that lucky winner. Visit swellheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
Psst! Did you know that Pimlico Plumbers have an utterly fabulous 24-hour service for plumbing, heating, drains, roofing, electrics, appliances, carpentry and building? Whatever your predicament, Pimlico Plumbers can send a friendly face to your door within the hour. Shh! And just between us, their work even comes with a 12-month guarantee. They aren't just any old tradesmen, they're Pimlico Plumbers, and they're always available on 0207 928 8888 or at pimlicoplumbers.com.
This summer, Q is for quizzical comedy.
That's what you're getting, so you better enjoy it.
Quality craftsmanship.
It's bang on.
Quirky cars. Quite brilliant goals.
Superb goal!
Quarried treasures.
Big nuggets, here we come.
Quantifiably, quintessentially, quite simply, Quest. Now in our new home on Freeview Channel 12 and also available on Virgin, Freesat and Sky.
It's absolute magic.
Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 25 to 9. Ed Davey is with us. He's one of the 2 candidates for the Liberal Democrat leadership. You can watch us on our Facebook page, on the LBC Twitter feed or the LBC website at lbc.co.uk. Time for your phone calls. Quite a lot of them are about Brexit. There are lots of policies that you could phone in and ask Ed about that aren't related to Brexit, if you would like to. I'm not forcing you to, but I'm just saying you possibly are more likely to get through if you do. David is in Henfield in West Sussex. Hello, David.
Hello, Ian.
Hi, what would you like to ask?
Well, we've just seen this big Lib Dem surge in the vote in the local and European elections, and there's been a lot of Lib Dem surges over the last 40 years. I can just about remember the one in 1974 when Jeremy Thorpe led the Liberals to a really high share of the vote in the general elections of that year. And the Lib Dem surge this time has been largely around opposition to Brexit. A lot of people are voting for the party for that reason, and the party's apparently gained a lot of new members. My question to Ed is, how does he see Lib Dem policy evolving once Brexit is resolved, and how does the Liberal Democrats, how do you see the Liberal Democrats maintaining a good level of support around Liberal policies more widely?
Well, David, thank you for your question. I think there is something different about this surge, particularly if you look at the European results. It's the first time in over 100 years that in the UK-wide election, the Liberal Democrats have beaten both the Conservative and Labour parties. So that's quite a surge. And you mentioned the increase in membership. We've never had so many members. So I think there's something slightly different about this. But your question about what happens after Brexit's resolved, either we stay or we leave, is a really important point. I've been arguing at the hustings up and down the country with Lib Dem members is that we need to be really clear in what we stand for. And I think we stand, for example, for a very strong environmental policy, that we are a party, both in our track record and our policies, wanting to tackle climate change. I think if
that's your main issue,
it's not my
if as a voter it's your main issue, why would you vote Liberal Democrat rather than go for the Greens? Because that is their almost single issue, isn't it?
Well, it is because it's a single issue for the Greens. We have many others. So take education. I was brought up under Paddy Ashdown as leader,
great man,
fantastic man, and I helped him develop a policy of a penny on income tax for education because we were saying education will be our top priority. I believe the next government, the Liberal Democrat government, I hope, would set a target.
And you said that with a straight face.
Did, because I believe it could happen. That we should set a mission for the country, that Britain should be the best educated, the best trained country in the world within a decade. And I think giving everyone a chance in life, creating equality of opportunity, so you get social justice and economic progress, I think that is exactly a message which will resonate from people from all sides of the political spectrum.
It's interesting because if you look at what Boris Johnson and Jeremy Hunt are saying, they're saying something very similar, that education is the first thing. I'd asked them both on Saturday, moment you walk into number 10, what's the first thing you do? And they both picked on education as their top priority.
Well, I'm delighted they did. But I have to call them out, both on the education policies of the Conservatives and the spending on education. I mean, you cannot really bring people up unless you're giving the head teachers in our primary and secondary schools the money to do the job. I talk to head teachers in Kingston all the time, and they are absolutely tearing their hair out about the budgets they're having to use to bring on their pupils. One policy I've advocated is that we should, if we're serious about education, we show that we really value it. We should increase the starting salary for a teacher to £30,000 so we attract the best people into
How much would
training.
that cost?
It would cost about $1.5 billion.
Where's that coming from?
Well, it would come, I think, ultimately, in the first instance, from borrowing, because I believe you can borrow to invest, and education is the best investment you'll ever make.
Do you not think we've had enough borrowing over the last 10 or 15 years? That public debt is now out of control. Surely we've got to live within our means.
Well, we do, but borrowing has been coming down, and one of the best ways to get your borrowing down is to grow your economy. And one of the best ways you can grow your economy is to invest in your infrastructure and your people, and that would be our message.
David, quick response from you.
Well, it's very interesting. I mean, the one thing I would like to see a Liberal policy on is adult social care. I think that's a massive issue, and it needs resolving pretty quickly.
Well, David, I couldn't agree with you more. We fought the last election of saying that a penny on income tax should go for health and social care, because both the health and social care needs to be seen together, and both services are seriously underfunded.
David, thank you. Quick text question from Henry in Merton. Do you support VAT being placed on private school fees?
No.
Why not?
Because I think you've got to treat all schools in a fair way. I don't think trying to push the private schools out of existence is a clever idea. But I do think we should have a lot more money into our public schools, our state schools.
Right, Robert is in Glasgow. What's your question, Robert?
Good evening,
Hi.
Mr. Davey. I am a Liberal Democrat.
Hi.
I live in Joe Swinson's constituency in Eastern Bartonshire. And I was part of the 1974 surge that supported Thorpe.
So
I go back
was
a long
my
way.
mum.
There you are. Good. Disappointingly, neither me nor your mum realised that he was trying to assassinate people, but there you go.
I don't think he was at that stage, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. My dictionary defines liberal as willing to respect or accept opinions different from one's own. So Why will you not accept the opinion of the British people?
Well, because I think in a democracy you're allowed to change your mind and you're allowed to have further elections and referendums.
I haven't changed mine.
Well, I know, but you're the one person and you're very valued and respected. But there are many other people
I don't
who
think so.
Well, I mean, in elections, be they referendums or the elections, we all go to the ballot papers, ballot boxes, and millions of us do, and not one person decides the outcome, but we do collectively. And I think there's a lot of evidence to show that a lot of people have changed their minds.
But there have been people.
But you have nothing, in fact, to demonstrate that is the case.
Well, we have a lot of opinion polls.
Well, you have opinion polls that show broadly it's not that much different from the opinion polls just before the referendum. If there had been a massive shift in public opinion to, say, 65-70% Remain, I could get your argument on a second referendum, but there isn't that evidence, is there?
Well, I think if you look at the YouGov polls that have asked the same question consistently, and therefore the easiest to compare, and you track them and you put them on a wall and you look at the charts, there is a very, very significant trend of people now wanting to remain. And I think it's quite a sizable one. It's actually different from the polls before the referendum themselves.
OK, if you say so. Robert, thank you very much. Chris is in Richmond. Hello, Chris.
Good evening. Question for you, Ed. Given all the ugliness in politics at the moment, in terms of, homophobia, racism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism.
Hello, Chris.
He didn't quite get to the end of his question. We'll see if we can get him back. Let's go to another one. Christopher in Kingston. Hello, Christopher.
Yes, good evening. Mr. Davey or Sir Edward, why on earth did you take a knighthood? What are the ridiculous, preposterous affectation that politicians take? And secondly, in 2015, when you lost your seat, did you do what Cable did? Did you actually take the loss of office allowance or not, which the taxpayer has to pay up and cough up? If you did take that, I think it's just self-serving entitlement that the politicians who lose office take this amount of money.
Well, first of all, I didn't go and ask for the knighthood. It was.
Well, why take it? You can take it, turn it down.
Why would he turn it down?
I think affectation.
Well, I think it'd be rather rude to Her Majesty.
No, it wouldn't be. I mean, Albert Finney, the actor, turned it down. H.G. Wells turned it down. David Hockney turned it down. He took the Order of Merit. Loads of people have turned it down.
Of all the things to feel strongly about, Christopher, I slightly scratch my head and think, why are you so angry about this?
I'm angry about it because politicians think they're cut above the rest. I mean, just a hack politician taking a knighthood. How absurd. What's he done to do when other people more worthy have turned it down is ridiculous. It's self-serving. And did you take the money in 2015 when you lost the seat?
I took the redundancy package along with...
Why do you feel you're entitled to that?
Well, because he was entitled to it.
Job with private energy companies. Why do you feel the taxpayer should pay that for you?
First of all, if you've been in employment for 18 years, as I had, and you left that, and you were sacked in the way that an MP is sacked by the electorate, then you get a redundancy package. So why should we be treated differently? Are you wanting to treat MPs differently and worse than other people? Is that what you want to do?
No, but you took a job in the private sector. You were the head of the Department of Energy, and so you took a private consultancy thereafter. Why do you feel you should go straight into the private sector with a department which you're involved with, and the taxpayer has to pay your redundancy payment?
Well, first of all, just to correct the record, because I'm afraid you're misleading people, you're not allowed to work at all for the first 3 months after leaving office. And you do have to pay the bills. I have 2 children and I have bills to pay. So if I didn't take the redundancy package, I wouldn't have had any money to pay the bills, would I?
Christopher, thank you very much. 0345 6060 973. We have Chris in Richmond back, but we'll wait for a couple of minutes before we hear from him. It's 8:45.
This is LBC.
Get an Ocean credit card. Check if you're eligible in minutes without affecting your credit score. It comes with a credit limit of up to £1,500 too. So get online and check for yourself at ocean.co.uk and get all that from Ocean. Intelligent Lending Limited is a credit broker. Capital One, the exclusive lender. Representative 39.9% APR variable.
At the AA, we're always trying to make your journey better. Our mechanics fix 8 out of 10 cars at the roadside, usually within 30 minutes of arriving. You could say we're simply the best. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong song. Join today from just £4.50 a month. Visit theaa.com. The AA, because anything can happen. New customers only. T's and C's apply.
We use the internet all the time. We can't help it. But isn't it annoying when it's, a bit slow? BT Superfast Fibre is so reliable it now comes with its own Stay Fast guarantee, which means we'll give you £20 back if your speed isn't everything you've been promised, morning, noon and night. For fast all the time, not just some of the time, search BT Broadband today, tonight or tomorrow. BT. Be there.
New customers, we guarantee the speed to your hub. £20 if you can't fix in 30 days. 4 claims a year, exclusions apply.
Divorce can be expensive. It affects your finances, assets, home, savings, pension, and most of all, your relationship with your children. It's probably one of the toughest times you'll ever go through. Cordell & Cordell understands these issues and helps men maximise their roles in their children's lives. Call now on 0330 60 60 161 or visit cordellcordell.co.uk. Office in central London. A partner men can count on.
Unlock the city with the new Range Rover Evoque. Know your side streets. From your inner city beats. Know your underbelly and where to fill your belly.
Your lamb, madam.
Know your north from your south. Live for the city with the new Range Rover Evoque. Land Rover, above and beyond.
Clearance at John Lewis & Partners Oxford Street is now on. There are thousands of great offers from kitchen and homeware to fashion and beauty, as well as expert advice from our partners and a minimum 2-year guarantee on all our electricals. More of what you love for less. Clearance now on.
Iain Dale on LBC.
It's 8:48 on LBC. Ed Davey is with us, Liberal Democrat MP for Kingston and Surbiton, or just to annoy Christopher in Kingston, I should call him his real title, Sir Ed Davey. Chris is in neighbouring Richmond. Hello, Chris. Now, you dropped off earlier, so just remind us what you were asking.
Yeah, so the question I was, what can we do to restore unity in our politics? I mean, I'm a white male, mid-40s, but I look at the way that some people get treated, who are, I think, minority women, and general in politics, has become so ugly. It's put me off. I'm able to stand. I've been through the process of selection to be a parliamentary candidate, but no way on earth would I do it right now. What would you do as leader of Liberal Democrats to try and make our politics better within the party and outside?
Well, I think we've got to argue strongly why equality and diversity is so important, both in a political party and in our society. Surely we should treat everyone with equal respect, whatever their gender, their sexuality, their race or religion. I mean, I can't see any justification other than equality of respect. And beyond that, diversity, I think we should celebrate diversity. I think it makes our country stronger. And unless politicians are regularly making that case, then we end up in the sorry state that you describe. I mean, I think, take immigration, for example. I think we've seen parties of all political persuasions appeasing an anti-immigrant rhetoric and failing to say, well, first of all, British people go all around the world and live all around the world. You know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Moreover, people coming to this country do fantastic work and it provides huge benefits for our country. And unless we start changing the debate and taking some of this false rhetoric on, we won't change attitudes. Chris?
I completely agree with that, Ed. I mean, I made a similar speech about the party's immigration policy last year, and I mean, I feel I've had personal circumstances. A friend of mine was kicked in the head who used to live in Twickenham and lives in Winchester and was told to F off back to France. I'm married to someone from Argentina. I'm particularly sick also of the way people like Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg picking up the Falklands. They bring up the word war and treachery. I'm sick to death of that being used, particularly by Tory politicians. And I really think we have to call them out on it time after time and pretend that we are in peacetime. And actually, you know, these people across the channel are our friends.
Well, I think one of the massive arguments for Britain being in the EU is the peace and security that it's created. I think people forget why it was originally put together. It was put together because we'd had centuries of war, and particularly the bloody war of the First World War and the Second World War, and we wanted to find ways that enabled our different countries to live in peace with each other. and the EU has been central to that, and it's been extraordinarily successful. And people get complacent; they fail to remember the history. And I think it's incumbent on Liberal Democrats and other pro-Remain parties to get out that argument and to make it clear that one of the best ways of preserving peace is working with your neighbours and friends in Europe.
OK, Chris, thank you for that. John of Somerstown says, would you go into Jeremy Corbyn? I think he means, would you go into coalition with Jeremy Corbyn?
No.
Ever?
No.
Even to remain in the EU?
No. I mean, I disagree with Jeremy Corbyn, not just over Brexit, and let's face it, he's in favour of Brexit. He's made that clear time and time again. So I disagree fundamentally with him on that.
Okay,
but also,
if he wasn't leader, say there was a, shall we say, more moderate leader.
Well, if there are moderate leaders in other parties, I'd want to talk to them. I'm not against going into coalition. I went into coalition with the Conservatives, and I'd be prepared to go into coalition in the future. But at the moment, we have I think, a very right-wing Conservative government who is wanting to pursue Brexit. We have a very left-wing Labour Party who wants to pursue Brexit. Liberal Democrats don't have anything in common with them. It'd be very difficult to have a conversation because we disagree on so many fundamental things. So I cannot see under my leadership Liberal Democrats forming a coalition with Jeremy Corbyn.
And I assume not with Boris Johnson either. What about Jeremy Hunt?
No.
No? You think Jeremy Hunt's a bit extreme?
Well, he's not as extreme as Boris Johnson. That is fair. He still wants to propose Brexit.
Well, he's a kind of David Cameron type of politician, isn't he? And you went into coalition with David Cameron.
Well, listen, David Cameron wasn't pursuing Brexit, and we actually managed to put agreement together which got 70% of the Liberal Democrat manifesto. By the way, I have some time for Jeremy Corbyn. For Jeremy Hunt. There's going to be a mix-up there, isn't there? I have some time for Jeremy Hunt.
Your second speak of the day.
Thank you for reminding me. I have some time for him. However, I disagree with him on a number of issues, particularly Brexit. I can't see any circumstances where the Liberal Democrats could go into coalition with a Tory Brexit government.
Right, Connor is in Fife. Connor, what would you like to ask?
Yes, I'd like to ask whether your use of words like far-right and racist towards the Conservative and Brexit parties are a bit extreme, considering there are none of those, and it might give people like Tommy Robinson a free pass in the future when no one listens to your rhetoric.
Well, I don't believe I've said the Conservative Party is racist. I don't think
You've labelled people in the Conservative Party racist.
No, I'll tell you what I've said. I'm very clear what I said on this issue. I've said that Boris Johnson has made racist comments, and I stand by that.
And Nigel Farage, your party has also called him racist when that's clearly untrue.
Well, I think he has made some racist comments in the past too as well. I mean, I think the way he has stirred up division and hatred. I mean, let's remember that poster that he stood in front of during the referendum where he was trying to make out there were hordes of people coming to come into Europe in our country. I thought that was a despicable act, and I thought it was sowing division and hatred. And so that's one of the reasons why I fundamentally disagree with him.
Sure, but it wasn't made up. The poster was a real picture. It wasn't made up by anyone, as far as I'm led to believe.
He was trying to suggest that if we stayed in the European Union, there'd be hordes of people coming to the United Kingdom. That was clearly his suggestion. It's what he said, and I think he was wrong to say it.
Okay. Oh, sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I was waiting for you to complete your point.
Okay. I was going to say also, your second referendum thing. Countries such as Turkey, when it ran the mayoral election, the European Union called that despicable and undemocratic or some sort. The second mayoral election, do you think that's undemocratic, considering you want a second referendum on Brexit because you didn't get your way?
That's a very good point, isn't it?
Well, I'm not sure if the two are directly analogous.
Well, I think they kind of are. If you want to run a referendum because you couldn't get your own way on the first one, that's what President Erdogan has just done.
Well, I think the big...
And the majority against his candidate was larger this time, which I suspect it also would be in the Brexit referendum.
I disagree with both of the points you're making there, Ian. First of all, you only would get a referendum if it went democratically through the Parliament. It's impossible to have a final say for British people without legislation going through Parliament.
That we can agree on.
And that would be a very democratic way of doing it.
And Parliament's always voted against it, hasn't it?
Well, actually, of all the other options, it's had the most votes. We got 280 votes.
Still lost. But again, you couldn't accept that.
No, what we're saying, as you know, nothing has been resolved in Parliament. No Brexit deal, no other alternative. But I do think in politics you need to count, and the option that's got the most votes to date has been another referendum. It got 280 votes at the last count. And I think if you look at the Conservative ministers and the Conservative loyalists who took the whip, who didn't vote for it, now there's been a disintegration. Let me finish. And now Boris Johnson may become the Prime Minister. I think there's a potential majority for that option.
But when you say you need to learn to count, can you tell the difference between 17.4 million and 16.1 million?
Yes, of course I can, Ian. You know that.
Well, but maybe a cheap point, but it's perfectly valid.
I don't disagree with that. I'm not suggesting, and no Liberal Democrat suggesting, that we should overturn the vote in 2016 by a non-democratic means. When you are wanting to overturn a referendum, you can only do that through a vote of the people, and that's what we're proposing, based on the fact there's a huge more amount of evidence of what Brexit means, how costly and complicated it is,
right.
and we realise that people have changed their minds.
Quick final call on this very subject. Jag is in Docklands. Jag, be quick if you could.
Yeah, just a quick question. You've been saying that you stand for the people and that you want the people's vote. What about the 17.5 million people that voted to leave? And you've been on all evening, and you know, I feel quite insulted telling me that I don't know what I voted for. I don't know what it's all about. I don't know anything. There's a lot of people like that.
Okay, Jack.
Well, Jack, I'm sorry if you felt insulted. I didn't mean to insult you at all. And I wasn't saying that you didn't know what you voted for. What I was saying is that since that vote that you took part in, the Conservative Party, who came in to say they were going to deliver Brexit, hasn't been able to agree what Brexit means. And that's just true. And what I'm suggesting is that people like you, given the complete chaos in delivering Brexit, should be allowed to vote again.
Jag, thank you very much for that. You've been doing a lot of head-to-head hustings with Joe Swinson, and we're trying to organise a date for you and Joe to come and do the same with us. How have these hustings gone? Because it must be quite difficult to do this against somebody that you've worked with quite closely for many years. Is it just sort of, well, I agree with Joe, I agree with Ed, or does it get a bit feisty from time to time?
Well, it is true to say that in the Liberal Democrat leadership race, we are friends and we're courteous and we respect each other and we're not at each other's throat. Maybe
I'll revise my opinion. Maybe we won't do a head-to-head then.
Well, I think actually it's a good way to conduct politics. I think it's in sharp contrast to the fairly acerbic and almost nasty way the Conservatives have gone about their leadership.
On that controversial bombshell, we will call it to end there.
You completely agree with it, Ian. That's great.
Well, I think all leadership contests have moments, don't they? Ed Davey, thank you very much indeed. Ian. Hopefully we will have you back for this head-to-head with Joe Swinson at some point. Joe is with us next Monday from 8 p.m. Now, coming up in the next hour, we're going to be asking you a slightly bizarre question, you might think. Is heaven real? Geraint in Cardiff Bay says there is definitely a place called heaven. Lots of girlfriends have told me that I've taken them there. This is LBC. It's 9 o'clock.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.